Hey all, it is me, Mr. T. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with lesson 16, irrational numbers. Okay, you're doing your mental math, you're doing your problem solving. Okay, should be relatively straightforward. This one is a little tricky. Okay, but I think you guys can sort of figure it out. The real question is whether or not it's getting bigger or smaller. Okay. And what might be happening, okay? So think about that. Let me go ahead and do lesson 16, irrational numbers. All right, so irrational numbers, well, first I guess we're talking about square roots of many rational numbers, such as square root of 2 and square root of 3, are not rational numbers, since there is no whole number that times itself equals 2, right? Something times itself has to equal 2 in order for it to be the square root. So if you try and figure out what the square root of 2 is, you're going to get a very different number, okay? Square root of 2 and square root of 3 are greater than square root of 1 and less than the square root of 4. The values are more than 1 and less than 2, okay? So we know they're somewhere in between 1 and 2. And if that makes sense, if what we're doing is the square root of 1 equals 1, the square root of 4 equals 2. The square root of 2 and the square root of 3 fall somewhere in between 1 and 2. To find the approximate value, we can use a calculator. Sure, okay, that would be very easy to do. It would give us the number. But how do the displays for square root and 2 differ from the squares of 1 and 4? Well, the thing is that it will be a repeating pattern. It'll go on forever, okay? There is no just rational number that just does it, okay? That just has it. It's not like 1.26. It's just goes on. There's like a ... It just goes on forever, which is really odd, okay? It's an irrational thing that these numbers just go on forever. And so that's kind of an odd system with our math. The way it works is there's essentially what it means is there's no real number that times itself equals 2. Now, so the prefix "ir" means not, and rational means makes sense, so it doesn't make sense is essentially what we're talking about. We're talking about numbers that don't make sense. Okay, so which number is irrational? Okay. Well, there's no perfect square for 8. There's a cubed root for 8, but not a square root for 8. Okay. So here, all it's really asking you to do, which is nice, is it's just seemingly all they're wanting you to know. You're not actually being asked to solve any of these irrational numbers, which is very nice, okay? So all you have to do is remember your perfect squares. And then realize that any number that comes in between these perfect squares, right? So 17, the square root of 17 is somewhere in between 4 and 5. The square root of 18, here, the square root of 10 is somewhere in between 3 and 4, okay? If we have a line, okay, the square root of 15 is somewhere closer to 4, but still somewhere in between 3 and 4. Okay, it's not quite 4. 3 something something. Okay, so that's all it's really asking you to do at this point, which is a relief. I was worried, honestly, because last chapter I feel like it threw a lot at you really quickly. So it does allow you to use a calculator for some of these, okay? If it is not asking for a calculator, do not use it, okay? For your written practice, let's go ahead. Let's do 5 through 20. Sorry, 5 through 21. Okay. So the written practice, 5 through 21. Yeah, just 5 through 21. I think that's good. All right, guys. Have a good one.